The mahogany conference room fell silent as the lawyer opened the sealed envelope. Matthew Sterling, the tech billionaire's son, sat smugly across from me, already calculating how he'd spend his inheritance. But when the DNA results were read aloud, his confident smile vanished faster than morning mist. After 23 years of believing I was just Aurora, the orphan's nanny, I was about to discover that everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel for more stories and comment which country you're watching me from. My name is Aurora, and until 3 months ago, I believed I was nobody special. I worked as a nanny for the Sterling family, one of the wealthiest families in California. Their sprawling estate overlooked the Pacific Ocean, and every morning I'd wake up in my small room above the garage, grateful for the job that kept me fed and housed. I'd been working for the Sterlings for 2 years, ever since I aged out of the foster care system at 18. The job came through a placement agency that specialized in helping former foster kids find work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and stability was something I'd never had growing up. The Sterling family consisted of Harrison Sterling, the 70-year-old tech mogul who'd built his fortune in early internet infrastructure, and his adult children, Matthew, 32, and Bella, 28. Matthew was the golden boy, Harvard MBA, perfectly styled hair, and a sense of entitlement that could fill a stadium. Bella was different, kinder, but she lived in New York and rarely visited. My primary responsibility was caring for Chase, Matthew's 5-year-old son. Chase's mother had passed away in a car accident when he was barely 2, and Matthew wasn't exactly the nurturing type. He was too busy managing his father's business empire and maintaining his social media presence to spend a quality time with his son. Chase was a sweet kid, curious and energetic, but he was also dealing with the loss of his mother in ways that broke my heart. He'd have nightmares and cry for his mommy, and Matthew would just turn up the volume on his phone and tell me to handle it. "Aurora, can you keep Chase quiet tonight?" Matthew would say, not looking up from his laptop. "I have an important video conference with investors in Tokyo." "Of course, Mr. Sterling. I'll take care of it." "Of course, Mr. Sterling. I'll take care of it right away." I'd scoop up Chase, who was trying to get his father's attention. "Come on, buddy. Let's read a story." I'd spend hours with Chase, reading him books, playing games, teaching him to ride his bike. In many ways, I was more of a parent to him than his actual father. But I was just the nanny, and I knew my place. The Sterling mansion was like something out of a magazine. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and artwork that probably cost more than most people's houses. But despite all the luxury, it felt cold and empty. The only warmth came from my relationship with Chase and my occasional conversations with Harrison Sterling himself. Mr. Sterling was different from his son. He was quieter, more thoughtful, and he seemed to genuinely care about people beyond their usefulness to him. Sometimes in the evenings, he'd find me in the garden with Chase and sit with us, telling stories about his childhood or asking about my day. "Aurora," he said one evening as we watched Chase chase fireflies, "you're good with him. He's lucky to have you." "Thank you, Mr. Sterling. He's a special kid." "He is, and you're a special young woman. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured he was just being kind. But looking back, I wonder if he knew something I didn't. Living in the Sterling house meant I was invisible to most of their social circle. I'd serve drinks at their parties, wrangled Chase during family gatherings, and fade into the background while they discussed business deals and vacation plans. Matthew treated me like I was part of the furniture, useful when needed, ignored otherwise. He'd snap his fingers when he wanted something, never said please or thank you, and seemed to forget I was a human being with feelings. "Aurora, Chase spilled juice on my laptop. Clean it up and make sure it doesn't happen again." "I'll take care of it right away, Mr. Sterling." "And next time watch him more carefully. I don't have time for these kinds of mistakes." I'd bite my tongue and clean up the mess, reminding myself that I needed this job. Where else would someone like me, no family, no connections, no college degree, find steady work that included room and board? But it was Harrison Sterling who puzzled me the most. He'd seek me out for conversations that seemed oddly personal for an employer talking to the nanny. He'd ask me about my childhood, my dreams, my thoughts on everything from books to current events. "Aurora, tell me about your life before you came here," he said one afternoon as I was folding Chase's laundry. "There's not much to tell, Mr. Sterling. I was in foster care, aged out of the system at 18, and needed work. But before that, do you remember your early childhood, your parents?" I shook my head. "I was found abandoned at a hospital when I was about 2 years old. No identification, no family came looking for me. I've been in the system ever since." Something flickered in his eyes. Sadness, maybe, or regret. That must have been difficult. "It was what it was. I learned to take care of myself." "Yes," he said quietly. "I can see that you did." These conversations always left me feeling unsettled, like there was something he wanted to say but couldn't. I'd catch him watching me sometimes, with an expression I couldn't quite read. Meanwhile, Matthew's behavior toward me was getting worse. He'd make cutting remarks about my background, especially when his friends were around. "Aurora grew up in foster care. Can you imagine? No family, no connections, no prospects, but she's good with kids, so she works out for us." His friends would chuckle politely, and I'd feel my face burn with embarrassment. But I'd smile and nod, because I needed this job more than I needed my dignity. The worst part was how he talked about me in front of Chase. "Aurora's just the nanny buddy. She takes care of you because we pay her to. It's not like she's family or anything." Chase, being 5, would look confused. "But Aurora loves me, right, Aurora?" "Of course I do, sweetheart." I'd shoot him a look that he completely ignored. But children are perceptive, and I could see that Chase was starting to understand the difference between being cared for out of love and being cared for out of obligation. It broke my heart. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning in late September. I was in the kitchen making breakfast when I heard raised voices coming from Harrison Sterling's study. The door was closed, but the argument was loud enough that I could hear every word. "Dad, you're being ridiculous," Matthew was shouting. "She's the nanny. She's nobody." "She's not nobody, Matthew. She's what? A foster kid who got lucky? Come on, Dad. Just because you feel sorry for her doesn't mean you should. This isn't about pity, and you know it." "Then what is it about? Because I'm telling you, if you're thinking what I'm thinking, the family will never accept it." "The family will accept whatever I decide," Harrison said, his voice cold and authoritative. "And what I decide is based on truth, not your prejudices." I crept closer to the door, my heart pounding. What are they talking about? "Dad, please, think about what you're doing. Think about the company, the legacy, our reputation. You can't just—" "I can do whatever I want with my own estate, Matthew. And I will." The conversation ended abruptly, and I heard footsteps approaching the door. I scrambled back to the kitchen, pretending to be busy with breakfast. Matthew stormed out, his face red with anger. He glanced at me with something that looked like hatred, then left the house without a word. A few minutes later, Harrison Sterling appeared in the kitchen. He looked tired and older than his 70 years. "Good morning, Aurora," he said quietly. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling. Would you like some coffee?" "Please." He sat down at the kitchen island, something he rarely did. Usually he took his meals in the formal dining room. I poured his coffee and set it in front of him, noticing how his hands shook slightly as he lifted the cup. "Aurora," he said after a moment, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Of course, Mr. Sterling." "Have you ever wondered about your biological parents, about where you came from?" The question caught me off guard. Sometimes, but I learned early not to dwell on it. The social worker said there was no information about my family. What if I told you that might not be entirely true? What do you mean? I mean that sometimes people in positions of power make decisions that affect other people's lives in ways they don't understand until much later. Mr. Sterling, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup. Aurora, I think it's time you knew the truth about who you are. Before he could say more, Chase came running into the kitchen, and the moment was broken. But I spent the rest of the day wondering what Harrison Sterling had been about to tell me. That night, after Chase was asleep, Harrison Sterling asked me to meet him in his study. The room was lined with books and awards, photos of him with presidents and celebrities, evidence of a life lived at the highest levels of society. "Please, sit down," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. I sat down nervously, my hands folded in my lap. "Mr. Sterling, if this is about my work performance, it's not." He opened a drawer and pulled out a manila folder. "Aurora, what I'm about to tell you is going to change your life. I need you to listen carefully." I nodded, my heart racing. 23 years ago, I was a different man. I was consumed with building my business, making money, gaining power. I was also married to someone who wasn't Matthew and Bella's mother, someone I'd divorced years earlier. "I don't understand why you're telling me this." "Because," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "that woman was pregnant when she left. She was carrying my child." The room seemed to spin around me. "Mr. Sterling." "She was young, Aurora, barely 21. She worked at one of my companies, and our relationship was complicated. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I was in the middle of a huge business deal, and I couldn't afford the scandal. I was selfish and scared and stupid." "What happened to her?" "I gave her money and told her to disappear. I told her I'd ruin her life if she ever tried to contact me or claim that the child was mine." His voice broke. "I was a coward, Aurora. I chose my reputation over my own child. But what does this have to do with me?" Harrison Sterling looked at me with eyes filled with 23 years of regret. Her name was Elena Matthews. She was beautiful, intelligent, and kind. She had long dark hair and green eyes, just like yours. I felt like I couldn't breathe. You think I'm... "I don't think, Aurora. I know. I've known since the day you walked into this house. You look exactly like her, and you have mannerisms that are unmistakably mine." "But the record said I was abandoned at a hospital. There was no family." "Elena was in a car accident when you were 2 years old. She was dying, and she managed to get you to safety before she passed away. She probably destroyed any documents that would have led back to me, protecting you from a man she thought was heartless." I was shaking now, tears streaming down my face. "Are you saying that you're my father?" "I'm saying that I believe you are my daughter, my firstborn child, the child I abandoned out of fear and selfishness." The room fell silent except for the sound of my ragged breathing. Everything I thought I knew about my life was crumbling around me. "I need proof," I whispered. "Of course you do. I've already arranged for a DNA test. But Aurora, I need you to understand something. Whether the test confirms what I already know in my heart, you are not just the nanny. You never were just the nanny. You are my daughter, and you are entitled to everything that comes with that." "What about Matthew and Bella? What about your family?" "Bella will be shocked, but happy. She's always wanted a sister. Matthew..." He paused. "He'll be angry. He's always assumed he would inherit everything. But blood is blood, Aurora, and you are my blood." The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I went through the motions of my daily routine, caring for Chase, managing the household, pretending everything was normal, while inside my entire world was turning upside down. Matthew seemed to sense that something was happening. He was more hostile than usual, making snide comments about my place in the family and my temporary status in the house. "Don't get too comfortable, Aurora," he said one morning as I was serving breakfast. "Things change quickly around here." "I understand, Mr. Sterling." "Do you? Because I think you might be getting ideas above your station." I bit my tongue and continued serving breakfast, but I could feel his eyes on me, calculating and cold. Harrison Sterling was different. He was kinder, more attentive, almost paternal in a way that made sense now. He'd find reasons to spend time with me, asking about my day, my thoughts, my dreams. "Aurora," he said one evening, "what would you do if you suddenly had all the resources in the world? What would you want to accomplish?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I've never had the luxury of thinking beyond basic survival." "Think about it now. What matters to you?" I thought about Chase, about all the kids in foster care who felt as lost and alone as I had. I think I'd want to help children, kids who don't have families, who need someone to believe in them. "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say," he said, smiling. "You have your mother's heart." The DNA test results arrived on Thursday. Harrison Sterling called me into his study, and I found him standing by the window looking out at the ocean. "The results are in," he said without turning around. I stood frozen in the doorway, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. "Aurora," he said, finally turning to face me, "you are my daughter. You are Aurora Sterling, and you are my firstborn child." I collapsed into a chair, overwhelmed with emotions I couldn't name. Relief, joy, fear, anger, they all crashed over me at once. "I'm so sorry," he said, kneeling beside my chair. "I'm so sorry for what I put you through. I'm sorry for the years you spent alone, thinking you had no one. I'm sorry for being too much of a coward to find you sooner." "You're really my father?" I whispered. "I'm really your father, and I love you, Aurora. I have loved you since the moment I realized who you were." We held each other and cried for the lost years, for the pain, for the future we could finally build together. Harrison Sterling called a family meeting for the following Sunday. Bella flew in from New York looking confused, but curious. Matthew arrived with his lawyer, which should have been a warning sign. We gathered in the main living room, the same room where I had served countless cocktail parties and family gatherings. But this time, I wasn't serving. I was sitting on the sofa next to Harrison Sterling, my father, while he prepared to change our family forever. "I've asked you all here because I have an announcement to make. It's something that will affect all of us, and I wanted you to hear it directly from me." Matthew leaned forward, his expression suspicious. "Dad, whatever this is about, I hope you've thought it through carefully." "I have, Matthew. I've thought about it for 23 years. Bella looked between her father and me, clearly trying to figure out what was happening. "Dad, you're scaring me. What's going on?" Harrison Sterling took a deep breath. "Aurora is not just our nanny. She is my daughter. Your sister. She is my firstborn child." The room exploded into chaos. Bella gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Matthew jumped to his feet, his face red with rage. "That's impossible," Matthew shouted. "She's nobody. She's just some foster kid who—" "She is my daughter," Harrison said firmly. "I have DNA proof, and I have the documentation to prove it. Aurora is a Sterling, and she will be treated as such." Bella was staring at me with wide eyes. "Aurora, is this true?" "I'm still processing it myself." "Oh my God," Bella said, and then she was across the room, wrapping me in a hug. "I have a sister! I have a sister!" Matthew's lawyer whispered something into his ear, and Matthew's expression grew even darker. "Dad, this is a mistake. Even if she is biologically related to you, she has no claim to the family assets. She's been out of the family for 23 years. She's been out of the family because I failed her, but she's back now, and she will receive everything she's entitled to as my daughter. What does that mean, exactly? Harrison Sterling looked at his son with an expression I'd never seen before. Disappointment mixed with determination. It means that Aurora will inherit an equal share of everything. The house, the business, the trust funds. Everything will be split 3 ways between you, Bella, and Aurora. Matthew's face went white. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. And Matthew, I suggest you adjust your attitude towards your sister. She's not going anywhere. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal meetings, paperwork, and family drama. Harrison Sterling's lawyers worked around the clock to update his will and estate plans, while Matthew's lawyers looked for any way to contest the changes. Matthew's behavior toward me went from dismissive to openly hostile. He'd make cutting remarks about my convenient arrival in the family, implying that I was somehow manipulating his father. It's amazing how quickly gold diggers can work, he said one morning in front of the entire household staff. 23 years of patience, and now she's hit the jackpot. Matthew, that's enough, Harrison said sternly. Aurora is your sister, and you will treat her with respect. She's been playing the long game, Dad. Can't you see that? The sweet, innocent nanny routine was all an act. I stood up, my hands shaking, but my voice steady. Matthew, I understand you're angry. I understand this changes things for you, but I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know who I was until 2 weeks ago. Right. Very convenient timing. The timing wasn't convenient for anyone, I said. It was 23 years too late. Harrison Sterling's expression hardened. Matthew, you're out of line. Aurora has been nothing but kind to this family. She's been more of a parent to Chase than you've ever been. Don't bring my son into this. Your son adores Aurora. She's been the most stable, loving presence in his life. Maybe you should be grateful instead of resentful. Matthew stormed out, but not before giving me a look that made my blood run cold. I realized that this wasn't just about money or inheritance. This was about power, control, and the fact that I represented everything Matthew had always taken for granted. Bella, on the other hand, was incredible. She took a leave of absence from her job in New York and moved back home to help me adjust to my new reality. Aurora, she said one evening as we sat on the terrace, I know this is overwhelming, but I want you to know that I'm so happy you're here. I've always felt like something was missing from our family. I'm scared, Bella. I don't know how to be a Sterling. I don't know how to be rich. I don't know how to be anything other than what I've always been. You don't have to change who you are. You just have to accept who you've always been. You're my sister, and your dad's daughter. That's not about money or status. That's about family. The crisis came to a head on a Friday evening in November. Harrison Sterling had been feeling unwell for several days, and his doctor had advised him to rest. But Matthew chose that evening to make his final play. He arrived at the house with his lawyer and a stack of documents. I was in the library with Chase, reading him a bedtime story when they barged in. Aurora, Matthew said, his voice cold and official, we need to talk. I'm putting Chase to bed. Can this wait? No, it can't wait. Chase, go to your room. The adults need to talk. Chase looked confused and scared. But Aurora was reading to me. Aurora won't be reading to you anymore, Matthew said cruelly. She's not your nanny anymore. Remember, she's supposedly family now. I knelt down to Chase's level. Sweetheart, go to your room. I'll come say goodnight in a few minutes. After Chase left, Matthew's lawyer spread the documents across the coffee table. Miss Matthews, it's Miss Sterling, I corrected. Miss Matthews, he continued, my client is prepared to offer you a substantial settlement in exchange for your voluntary relinquishment of any claims to the Sterling estate. I looked at the papers, my heart pounding. What kind of settlement? $5 million, plus a house in a nice neighborhood, plus a trust fund that will provide you with a comfortable income for life. It was more money than I'd ever dreamed of having. Enough to live comfortably, to help other kids in foster care, to never worry about security again. All you have to do, Matthew said, leaning forward, is sign these papers stating that you are not Harrison Sterling's daughter and that you have no claim to the Sterling family assets. But I am his daughter. We have DNA proof. DNA can be faked. Documents can be forged. No one will ever believe that a foster kid, nobody, is really a Sterling. Your father believes it. Your father is old and sick and feeling guilty about something that happened decades ago. He's not thinking clearly. I looked at the documents again. $5 million, a house, security for life. All I had to do was walk away from a family that one member clearly didn't want me to be part of. I need time to think, I said. You have until tomorrow morning. Sign the papers, take the money, and disappear. Or we'll make your life very difficult. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you a choice. Take the easy way out or fight a battle you can't win against people who have unlimited resources and no conscience. After they left, I sat in the library staring at the documents. $5 million. It was a fortune. It was enough to start over, to build a life without the complications of being a Sterling. But as I sat there, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Chase peeked around the corner. Aurora, are you okay? You look sad. I opened my arms and he ran to me, climbing onto my lap. I'm okay, buddy. Are you really not going to be my nanny anymore? I don't know, sweetheart. Things are complicated right now. But you'll still love me, right? Even if you're not my nanny? Of course I'll still love you. I'll always love you. Good, because I don't want you to go away. You are the best person in my whole family. As I held Chase, I realized that this wasn't just about money or legal documents. This was about family. About belonging, about the love that had been missing from my life for 23 years. The next morning, I found Harrison Sterling in his study, looking frail and worried. Aurora, he said when he saw me, Matthew told me about last night. I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to have to deal with this. I offered me $5 million to disappear, I said, sitting across from him. And what did you tell him? I told him I needed time to think. Harrison Sterling nodded slowly. And what have you decided? I looked at this man, who was my father, who had spent 23 years regretting his choices, who had welcomed me into his family with open arms. I've decided that I'm not going anywhere. I'm Aurora Sterling, and this is my family. Matthew can threaten me all he wants, but I'm not signing those papers. Relief flooded his face. Aurora, you don't know how happy that makes me. But I need to know something. Are you sure about this? Are you sure you want to give up everything you've built to claim a daughter you abandoned? I'm not giving up anything, he said firmly. I'm finally doing what I should have done 23 years ago. I'm claiming my daughter and giving her everything she deserves. Even if it means fighting Matthew? Especially if it means fighting Matthew. He needs to learn that being a Sterling means more than just having money. It means having character, compassion, and integrity. You have all of those things, Aurora. You're more of a Sterling than he is. That afternoon, we called another family meeting. This time, Harrison Sterling's lawyer was present, along with Matthew and his attorney. I understand there was a conversation last night about my daughter leaving the family in exchange for money, Harrison began. Dad, we were just trying to find a solution that would work for everyone. The solution that works for everyone is acceptance. Aurora is my daughter, she's a Sterling, and she will receive her full inheritance. Matthew's lawyer spoke up. Mr. Sterling, we have concerns about the validity of these DNA tests. We'd like to request independent verification. Fine, Harrison said. We'll do a dozen tests if necessary, but the results will be the same. We also have questions about the timing of this revelation. It's convenient that these claims are being made now, when Mr. Sterling is in declining health. The timing is unfortunate, but it's not suspicious. I've been looking for my daughter for years. I finally found her, and I'm not letting her go again." Matthew stormed out, but not before turning to me one last time. "You've destroyed this family. I hope you're happy." The legal battle lasted 6 months. Matthew hired the best lawyers money could buy, challenging everything from the DNA tests to my mother's identity to my father's mental competency. But Harrison Sterling had been preparing for this fight for years, and he had documentation that proved every aspect of my story. In the end, the courts ruled in our favor. I was legally recognized as Aurora Sterling, daughter of Harrison Sterling, with full inheritance rights. Matthew was ordered to pay my legal fees and to cease all harassment. But the real victory wasn't legal. It was personal. During those 6 months, I grew closer to my father and to Bella. I learned about my mother from letters and photos my father had kept hidden for decades. I discovered that I had her laugh, her love of books, and her fierce determination to protect the people she loved. Most importantly, I learned that I wasn't alone anymore. I had a family, a complicated, flawed, but loving family. The day the final judgment was handed down, I found myself back in that mahogany conference room where this all began. But this time, I wasn't sitting across from Matthew as an enemy. I was sitting next to my father and sister as a daughter. "Aurora," Harrison Sterling said as we left the courthouse, "I know this has been difficult. I know you've paid a price for being my daughter." "We've all paid a price," I said, "but it was worth it. What will you do now? You can do anything you want. You have the resources to live any life you choose." I thought about the scared, lonely girl that had walked into the Sterling mansion 3 years ago, believing she was nobody special. Then I thought about the woman I'd become, someone who had fought for her place in the world and won. "I want to help kids who are where I was," I said. "Kids in foster care who think they're nobody special. I want to show them that they matter, that they have value, that they can build lives worth living." "That sounds exactly like something your mother would have wanted to do," he said with tears in his eyes, "and something her daughter is going to do." 6 months later, I opened the Elena Matthews Center for Foster Youth, a comprehensive program that provides education, counseling, and support services for kids aging out of the system. It was funded by my inheritance, but more importantly, it was staffed by people who understood that every child deserves to know they're worth fighting for. Matthew eventually came around, though it took time. He realized that I wasn't his enemy. I was his sister and Chase's aunt, and someone who genuinely cared about the family. We're not close, but we're civil, and he's learning to be a better father to Chase with my help. Chase, now 8, calls me Aunt Aurora and thinks having a secret sister in the family is the coolest thing ever. He helps me at the center sometimes, reading to younger kids and showing them that someone believes in them. And Harrison Sterling? He lived to see his grandchildren graduate from high school, to walk me down the aisle when I married a wonderful man who loved me for who I was, not what I was worth. He passed away peacefully in his sleep at 82, surrounded by his family, all of his family, including the daughter he'd found and the grandchildren he'd never expected to have. At my father's funeral, I stood at the podium to deliver the eulogy. The chapel was packed with business leaders, politicians, and celebrities, all there to honor a man who had built an empire. But I talked about a different kind of legacy. "My father was a man who made mistakes," I said, looking out at the crowd. "He was human, flawed, and capable of poor judgment. But he was also capable of growth, of change, of redemption." I paused, looking at Bella and Matthew and Chase in the front row. "He taught me that family isn't about DNA or money or social status. It's about love, acceptance, and the willingness to fight for each other. He taught me that it's never too late to do the right thing, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the truth about who they are. As I finished speaking, I realized that the DNA test that had started this whole journey was just paperwork. The real inheritance wasn't the money, or the house, or the business empire. The real inheritance was the knowledge that I was worthy of love, that I belonged somewhere, and that I had the power to change other people's lives the way my father had changed mine. I was no longer just Aurora, the orphaned nanny. I was Aurora Sterling, daughter, sister, aunt, and advocate. I was someone who mattered, someone who had a place in the world, someone who could make a difference. And that was worth more than all the money in the world. Sometimes the people who seem to have the least to offer are actually the ones who have the most to give. And sometimes the most important test isn't the one that proves who you are. It's the one that proves who you choose to become. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time. Please ensure to tell me what you think about the story in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories. Until next time, bye!